if I make a fool of myself, I'm just being myself. Right. So, let's see. Tonight, I wanted to talk about the apocalypse. Oh no. So, the reason I wanted to talk about this is there seems to be so much anxiety and there in the world right now, and just pretty much all throughout history that I can ascertain about the end of the world and what's going to happen. And there's so many predictions of how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen. I think the world was supposed to end in my lifetime that I know of, that like at least 3 major times, and I'm sure there was many more minor ones. And so I just wanted to ask everybody, what are some ways that you've heard the world is going to end?
2012?
Yeah, 2012, yeah.
My calendar.
Y2K, yeah. I was so disappointed the next morning. I was waiting and I thought, all right, okay, I'm ready. And then the next morning, everything was fine and my computer worked and I was bummed out. Anyone else? You're done, Ishwar?
The disease, a plague.
A plague, yeah. That was a common one in the last few years too, since we were all going through that pandemic. Yeah, Mary Sachi.
My world as I knew it was going to end.
Yeah, your world as you knew it was going to end. Mm-hmm. For any particular reason, or just?
Just because there was all these different speculations, and they would come and go, so it was felt my world going to end.
Yeah, there was one day you told Kirtan that the power grid was going to get knocked out, and we needed to be ready. I remember this because you were in the kitchen. You were telling us, and so we're like, oh well, that probably won't happen. We don't know. And the next day, the power went out, Mary, and we were like, oh my goodness. But there was just an accident up on the road, and they took out a power line.
Mary was right.
Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty funny because for a minute we were like, oh my gosh, it's really happening. The end is here. So if you look up, I forget the exact words I used, but if you look up like list of dates predicted for apocalyptic events on Wikipedia, in that list alone, there's like over 160 events that they are talking about there that someone has compiled on Wikipedia. So some of my favorites I wanted to share. So in 1806, in England, in Leeds, England, a hen began laying eggs that said, they had the phrase on them, "Christ is coming." So, and people were panicking. They're like, "Oh my gosh, this has, huh?" Oh, all right. Yes, what is it?
It's an egg.
Is it a real egg?
No.
So
I found it on the side of the road, and I've been throwing it at people just to tease them.
What's a rock?
okay,
It's kind of
so yeah,
it's a fake egg.
it's really weird. So it said, "Jesus is coming" on the egg, and oh, that didn't work. There goes my egg throwing career.
Well, I was told that sometimes they'll put it in chicken coops to tell that chickens to start laying eggs.
Oh, interesting. All right. Well, this eventually turned out to be a hoax. I'm sure you guys are really surprised. The owner of the chicken, she was writing on the eggs that had hatched in corrosive ink so it would etch into the egg shell. She was writing, and then she was putting the eggs back inside the chicken.
Oh.
Right. So in 1910, a person named Flammarion, I don't know, there was the appearance of Halley's Comet, and he said that Halley's Comet would impregnate the atmosphere and possibly snuff out all life on the planet, but not the planet itself. And guess what? Comet pills were sold to combat this. comet pills. So that's not very surprising. In 1936, the founder of the Worldwide Church of God told members that the rapture was going to take place and that only they would be saved. After the prophecy failed, he changed the date 3 more times. So does everybody here know what the rapture is? Does anybody not know what it is? Okay. You don't know what it is? Okay. So the rapture is, in Christianity, it is a day when all the pious souls are going to be taken up to heaven, and all that will be left is the impious souls. So, and it's supposed to be like a day where like all these people just disappear, and then you're left. And there was like a really kind of hokey movie series and book series that came out called Left Behind that was based on that, about the people. I don't know if any of you caught that. I think I might have seen like part of one. So let's see. In 1967, George Van Tassel said that on August 20th, that would mark the beginning of the third woe of the apocalypse, during which the southeastern U.S. would be destroyed by a nuclear attack. And he claimed to have channeled this from an alien channeled this through him. An alien's name was Ashtar. So very interesting. Here's one that some people are probably pretty familiar with. Charles Manson predicted that an apocalyptic race war would occur in 1969. So let's see. Chuck Smith, the founder of Calvary Chapel, predicted that the generation of 1948 would be the last generation and that the world would end by 1981 at the latest. Smith identified that he could be wrong, but continued to say in the same sentence that his prediction was a deep conviction in his heart, and all his plans are predicated on that belief. Here's one some of you might remember. Marshall Applewhite, the leader of the Heaven's Gate cult. So this was he predicted in 26th of March, 1997, that a spacecraft was trailing the Hale-Bopp comet and argued that suicide was the only way to evacuate this Earth. So that cult members' souls could board the aircraft and be taken to another level of existence above human. And so he and 38 of his followers committed suicide. So there's a bunch more. Of course, there's the 2012 Mayan prediction. The Mayan calendar ended, and so everybody thought, okay, that must mean it's the end of the world. But I mean, like, our calendars, they end every year, and then a new one starts. So, and then of course, Y2K, everybody thought the world was going to end then because our computers didn't know how to change to the year 2000 from 1999. Turns out the computers did just fine. So why do you think that we keep predicting the end times? Does anybody have a thought? Yeah, Mary.
People love fear.
Yeah.
They love, they are addicted. And fear sells. You say sex sells, but fear sells. And if they can keep us scared, we're going to go throw money at it.
Yeah.
And
Very
fear
good.
is the thing that makes you spend your money like stupid.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. And I just wanted to say one other thing too, is that I was raised Christian, like a lot of us here maybe were, but in Deuteronomy 13 in the Bible, it says, stone all false prophets.
Mm.
And if they were following the Bible, every person that made a prediction that didn't come true should have been killed.
Sure.
I mean, that's what the Bible says to do.
Yeah.
I just say.
Well, and the majority of the predictions are predicting that Lord Jesus is coming back, and that's the signal, it's the beginning of the end. But it also says in the Bible that no one knows what time he'll come. So if those people are following their Bibles, they're not.
They're bringing everybody.
I think it's like the obsession with annihilation or apocalypse has to do with being back to Godhead.
That what?
in a misdirected way, it's like people just trying to get back to God.
Yeah, people know that this is not the place for them, right? So, let's see. So historically, there's been a lot of reasons, like reasons that Mary brought up, and mostly to divert attention from actual crises like poverty, war, unrest, things like that. Also to promote hatred against certain groups, you know. So that's a very common reason. And according to psychologists, possible explanations would include because it mentally reduces the actual danger in the world to a single definable source. So this is kind of a common explanation of addiction as well, that people have so many problems, they don't necessarily know how to or want to deal with them, and they take up an addictive lifestyle, and then they have just one big problem, and that's their only problem. And so it's a lot easier than thinking about, you know, all the other problems. So another reason that psychologists have discerned is because there's, like Mary said, an innate human fascination with fear. And there's personality traits of paranoia, powerlessness, and a modern romanticism involved in the end times, especially with so many movies and fiction. And so this is kind of causing people to sort of romanticize this idea. So, and I saw a chart that the number of apocalyptic predictions just shot up, like starting in the late 70s, and then just continues to rise. So this is very interesting. So polls conducted in 2012 across 20 countries found that over 14% of people believe the world will end in their lifetime, with percentages ranging from 6% of the people in France to 22% in the US and Turkey. Belief in the apocalypse is observed to be the most prevalent in people with lower rates of education, lower household incomes, and those under the age of 35. In the UK in 2015, 23% of the general public believed the apocalypse was likely to occur in their lifetime. That's a lot of people. Compared to 10% of experts from the Global Challenges Foundation. The general public believed the likeliest causes would be nuclear war, while experts thought it would be artificial intelligence. Only 3% of Britons thought the end would be caused by the Last Judgment, compared to 16% of Americans. Between 1% and 3% of people from both countries said the apocalypse would be caused by zombies or alien invasion. So, okay. So that was a lot of kind of nonsensical information. So what do the Vedas say about this? Does anybody know? Does anybody have a clue about what the Vedas will say when the end's going to happen?
Kali Yuga.
Huh?
Kali Yuga.
Yeah, Kali Yuga. Yeah. Yep. Kirtaneshwar Garangadas.
There is no end.
Okay, that's a good answer. All right, how about this particular age though? Huh?
One bad things are gonna happen. More people are gonna die.
Yeah.
Continents are gonna be-
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah.
Isn't it, like something like 400
Good.
years
Yes.
Kali,
Good job, Mary. That was what I was looking for.
That's what not something like that.
Yeah. About 427,000 years. So we got a long way. So don't worry. It's not going to end from civil unrest or nuclear war or anything like that. You know, those things might happen, but we'll still be going on. So yeah, the Vedas say at the end of Kali Yuga, which we are at the beginning of Kali Yuga, only 5,000 years have passed, and Kali Yuga still has about 427,000 more years to go. So one word about taking in the scriptures and the Vedas, you know, it's really I see so many people, they just kind of pick and choose what they like. They say, oh, you know what, I like this part, but I don't like this part so much. So I'm just gonna, you know, focus on this part and totally forget about this other part. But really, these things should be taken as a whole. There's a great metaphor. It's called the half a hen philosophy. So there was a guy who had an egg laying hen, and the hen's laying eggs, and he's able to sell the eggs, and he's making a nice profit from this. But he's noticing that some of his profit is being taken by having to feed this hen all the time, you know. So he decides, you know what, I'm going to cut the hen in half and just keep the egg laying half and get rid of the half that I have to feed. But as you know, that doesn't work, right? I mean, the hen's going to die. It's no longer going to produce eggs. So it kind of has to be taken as a whole. So yeah, I thought, I heard that just the other day, and I thought it was kind of cute. So. Okay. So yeah. So there's different yugas. So there's this great chart in here. It's really small though, but if anyone wants to look at it, they can. That kind of gives an idea of the vastness of time. So Kirtaneshwar was right. It isn't ever going to end. Although this yuga might end, or will end, and not might end. Another will start. It's just like the seasons, right? You know, winter comes, and then after winter comes spring, right? So right now we're in Kali Yuga. So Kali Yuga started about 5,000 years ago, and Kali Yuga is known as the age of quarrel, right? And I don't know if any of you would disagree with that. I mean, we just look at the state of our politics. Are just quarreling all the time. People are not getting along with their neighbors. People are not getting along with their family members. It's pretty dark time. So there is 3 other yugas before this. So there's Satya Yuga, which let's see. So that was about 2,165,000 years ago. And then that's the golden age. So things are going very well then. Then there's Treta Yuga. That's about 871,000 years ago. That's the Silver Age. Things have become a little degraded by then, but they're still pretty good. Then there's Dwarpa Yuga, which was ended about 5,000 years ago, and it's become further degraded. And then 5,000 years ago, Kali Yuga started, and that's the current Yuga that we're in. So what's interesting is that each age, we lived longer in Satya Yuga. So the average lifespan in Satya Yuga was 100,000 years. In Treta Yuga, the average lifespan was 10,000 years. In Dwarpa Yuga, the average lifespan is 1,000 years. And in Kali Yuga, the average lifespan was 100 years, about 100 years. So in Satya Yuga, things were really good, but we started to lose our austerity. That's how things started to become degraded. People started to, take some intoxication, but otherwise they were doing pretty well. In Treta Yuga, we started to lose our cleanliness, and that manifested in ways of just like kind of having illicit sex. And so then we were further degraded. And then Dwarpa Yuga, people started losing their mercy, and they started eating meat, and that made us further degraded. So in Kali Yuga, now we're starting to lose our truthfulness. and that's causing us to be further degraded. So each yuga corresponds to those four. Those are the four pillars of Dharma, right? Is austerity, cleanliness, mercy, and truthfulness. And right now we're standing on the one last leg, which is truthfulness. So, okay. So, what are the symptoms of Kali Yuga? Does anybody have any clues? Already got one of them? No?
We don't have faith.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, we're losing our faith. What's that?
Hypocrisy.
Hypocrisy, yes.
Helps remember things.
Yeah, difficult to remember things, hence why I have all these notes. Anybody else? Fighting, yeah. The age of quarrel.
Forgetting Krishna.
Forgetting Krishna, yes, absolutely. So let's see here. So I actually was a little concerned that this might be a little too much to give you guys, but Kirtaneshwar said, no, go ahead and do it. So, so here's some what the Srimad Bhagavatam says about symptoms of Kali Yuga. So this is from Canto 12 of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sukadev Goswami said, then, O king, religion, truthfulness, cleanliness, tolerance, mercy, duration of life, physical strength, and memory will all diminish day by day because of the powerful influence of Kali Yuga. In Kali Yuga, wealth alone will be considered the sign of a man's good birth. Proper behavior and fine qualities and law and justice will be applied only on the basis of one's power, right? We see this, right? People that have money, the rules are different for them when it comes to justice, right? And also wealth is the sign of a man's good qualities, right? We see that the most wealthy men in the world are also the most sought after. Everybody wants to be them, wants to be around them. Men and women will live together merely because of superficial attraction, and success in business will depend on deceit. Womanliness and manliness will be judged according to one's own expertise in sex, and a man will be known as a brahmana just by his wearing a thread. I mean, all you have to do is listen to our popular music, to what's popular, and it's just people boasting about their sexual prowess. I mean, that's the majority of so much popular music. So a person's spiritual position will be ascertained merely according to external symbols. And on that same basis, people will change from one spiritual order to the next. A person's propriety will be seriously questioned if he does not earn a good living. And one who is very clever at juggling words will be considered a learned scholar. So I see some people that are considered learned scholars, that they're, supposed to be these really intelligent scientists. And they just say complete and utter nonsense. I don't want to name names because that would be rude, but I think some of you might know who I'm thinking of. And so many people think, oh yes, this is a very learned person, this is a very learned scholar, when really they're just spouting off nonsense. I find it to be quite concerning that people are viewing these people as having, all the learning that is necessary for the world. And it's because they're good at speaking. A person will be judged unholy if he does not have money, and hypocrisy will be accepted as virtue. We see this in our politics, right? Especially the last election cycle. People were saying like, this candidate, a candidate would say some really offensive, harsh, things, and people would say, yes, they're speaking the truth, is very sad. So let's see. Marriage will be arranged simply by verbal agreement, and a person will think he is fit to appear in public if he has merely taken a bath. So I think we passed that point. If anybody's gone to Walmart recently, I mean, people are not bathing and they're just wearing their pajamas everywhere. I mean, and that's if you're lucky, they're actually wearing their pajamas. Sometimes they're wearing less than that. So a sacred place will be taken to consist of no more than a reservoir of water located at a distance, and beauty will be thought to depend on one's hairstyle. Filling the belly will become the goal of life, and one who is audacious will be accepted as truthful. That's our politicians, like all of them. He who can maintain a family will be regarded as an expert man, and the principles of religion will be observed only for the sake of reputation. Yeah, I've seen that in my own family. I've seen that in so many different churches that I've been to, where someone will be speaking very nice words about the different principles of their particular religion, but they're not practicing it. They're not practicing what they preach, right? We see this a lot. There's it always comes to mind when I think about those big mega churches that are always on TV and they're always asking for money. But when they're always preaching about charity and stuff like that. But I remember what was one of the big hurricanes came and it might have been Katrina, and they wouldn't open the church to let people come inside and take shelter. But meanwhile, they're preaching charity and to take care of your fellow man. So, as the earth thus becomes crowded with a corrupt population, whoever among any of the social classes shows himself to be the strongest will gain political power. Losing their wives and properties to such avaricious and merciless rulers who will behave no better than ordinary thieves, the citizens will flee to the mountains and forests. So our politicians, we know, are using their legislative power to take all of the tax monies that we pay in. I mean, maybe not all of them, but a large portion of them, and they're putting them in offshore bank accounts and doing all kinds of nefarious things. They're taking what is the property of the citizens and using it for their own desires. Harassed by famine and excessive taxes, people will resort to eating leaves, roots, flesh, wild honey, fruits, flowers, and seeds. Struck by drought, they will become completely ruined. The citizens will suffer greatly from cold, wind, heat, rain, and snow. They will be further tormented by quarrels, hunger, thirst, disease, and severe anxiety. The maximum duration of life for human beings in Kali Yuga will become 50 years. So it was maybe about 10 years ago, a study came out and said that generation was the first generation in a very long time that had a shorter life expectancy than their parents. And so this is already happening. By the time the age of Kali ends, the bodies of all creatures will be greatly reduced in size, and the religious principles of the followers of Varnashram will be ruined. The path of the Vedas will be completely forgotten in human society, and so-called religion will be mostly atheistic. The kings will be mostly thieves. The occupations of men will be stealing, lying, and needless violence, and all the social classes will be reduced to the lowest levels of Shudras. Cows will be like goats. Spiritual hermitage will be no different from mundane houses, and family ties will extend no further than immediate bonds of marriage. And I see this already happening too. And we see it in so many families. It's immediately just the husband, the wife, and the child. They don't associate with their parents or their cousins or their, aunts. It's not every family, but I've seen a lot of families like that. Let's see. Most plants and herbs will be tiny, and all trees will appear like dwarf Sami trees. Clouds will be full of lightning. Homes will be devoid of piety, and all human beings will have become like asses. At that time, the Supreme Personality of Godhead will appear on the earth, acting with the power of pure spiritual goodness. He will rescue eternal religion. In the age of Kali, people tend to be greedy, ill-behaved, and merciless. They fight one another without good reason. Unfortunate and obsessed with material desires, the people of Kali Yuga are almost all Sudras and barbarians. All right, here's gonna get really, really going. When there is a predominance of cheating, lying, sloth, sleepiness, violence, depression, lamentation, bewilderment, fear, and poverty, that age is Kali, the age of the mode of ignorance. Because of the bad qualities of the age of Kali, human beings will become short-sighted, unfortunate, gluttonous, lustful, and poverty-stricken. The women, becoming unchaste, will freely wander from one man to the next. Cities will be dominated by thieves, and we're seeing this in the news all the time right now. I mean, if anybody's gone to Target recently and everything's locked up, right? And that's because the cities are becoming dominated by thieves. They're just coming in and clearing off the shelves. And you see those things in the parking lot now, those camera things, and they talk to you. And it's like a camera light pole with a camera on it in the parking lot, and then it'll say things to you, like what during the COVID times it would say, please stay 6 feet apart, yeah. So the Vedas will be contaminated by speculative interpretations of atheists. Political leaders will virtually consume the citizens, and the so-called priests and intellectuals will be devotees of their bellies and genitals. I've heard a lady of the night, a sex worker, say that the best spot for her, she worked in Rome, and the best spot for her to pick up a date was right outside the Vatican. Mm-hmm. So the brahmacharis will fail to execute their vows and become generally unclean. The householders will become beggars. The vanaprasthas will live in the villages, and the sannyasis will become greedy for wealth. Women will become much smaller in size, and they will eat too much and have more children than they can properly take care of, and lose all shyness. They will always speak harshly and will exhibit qualities of thievery, deceit, and unrestrained audacity. Businessmen will engage in petty commerce and earn their money by cheating. Even when there is no emergency, people will consider any degraded occupation quite acceptable. Servants will abandon a master who has lost his wealth, even if that master is a saintly person of exemplary character. Masters will abandon an incapacitated servant, even if that servant has been in the family for generations. So I know we don't really have servants and masters so much these days, but we do if you think about our employment situation, right? So we know in my parents' lifetime, the number of companies that would offer a pension to their employees that were loyal was steadily declining. In my lifetime, that's like non-existent. I mean, there's still a few jobs out there that might give you a pension, but no, that doesn't. I have no hope of finding a job that'll give me a pension and allow me to retire. But in my parents' lifetime and my grandparents' lifetime, that was normal. That was a normal thing that companies did. It was also normal for the worker to try to have some loyalty to their job. But now, people go from job to job because they need to. They can't even get a pay raise unless they go to a different job. Cows will be abandoned or killed when they stop giving milk. In Kali Yuga, men will be wretched and controlled by women. They will reject their fathers, brothers, or other relatives and friends, and will instead associate with the sisters and brothers of their wives. Thus, their conception of friendship will be based exclusively on sexual ties. Uncultured men will accept charity on behalf of the Lord and will earn their livelihood by making a show of austerity and wearing a mendicant's dress. So we see this, the pastors of those mega churches, right? They're telling people like, if I don't get so much money by this time, God's going to strike me down, right? I need to have this new Cadillac, this brand new Cadillac. It's ridiculous. And they're just, living in these multi-million-dollar mansions, and they're taking all that money from their parishioners. Let's see. Those who know nothing about religion will mount a high seat and presume to speak on religious principles. In the age of Kali, people's minds will always be agitated. They will become emaciated by famine, taxation, and will always be disturbed by fear of drought. They will lack adequate clothing, food, and drink, will be unable to properly rest, have sex, or bathe themselves, and will have no ornaments to decorate their bodies. So, lacking adequate food and drink and clothing, this is starting to happen already. I don't know, just the quality and our ability to buy quality clothing is steadily declining. Our food is not as nutritious as it used to be because we may be eating the same things that our parents ate, but the level of nutrition has gone completely downhill, and the addition of adulterants has gone way up. So in Kali Yuga, men will develop hatred for each other, even over a few coins. Giving up all friendly relations, they will be ready to lose their own lives and kill even their own relatives. Men will no longer protect their elderly parents, their children, or their respectable wives. Thoroughly degraded, they will care only to satisfy their own bellies and genitals. O king, in the age of Kali, people's intelligence will be diverted by atheism, and they will almost never offer sacrifice to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the supreme spiritual master of the universe. So, and then here's a little more. As annihilation approaches, O king, there will be no rain upon the earth for 100 years. Drought will lead to famine, and the starving populace will literally consume one another. The inhabitants of the earth, bewildered by the force of time, will gradually be destroyed. Once when Srila Prabhupada was asked by a devotee, in your books you explain that we are in the Kali Yuga age. Is the Kali Yuga age coming to a close now? Srila Prabhupada said, no, it will continue for another 427,000 years. The duration of Kali Yuga is 432,000 years. Out of that, we've only passed 5,000 years. The balance is 427,000 years. And during this time, the condition of society will be worse, not better, but worse. In the last stage of Kali Yuga, there will be no food grains, no milk, no fruits. It will be a very horrible time. People will kill their own children and eat them, just like animals. The last stage of Kali Yuga will be like that. So before coming to that stage, better to take to Krishna consciousness and go back to Krishna. That is our program. We don't wish to wait for the worst things. The worst things are already happening, and it will still be worse. Instead of waiting for that time, better to become perfect by chanting Hare Krishna and go back home, back to Godhead. That is our position. All right, so is it all bad? Is it all doom and gloom? Are you depressed? Is everybody sad and depressed now?
No, we write anymore.
All right, good. I'm out of here. That was my, no. Okay, so no, it isn't all doom and gloom. So Bhagavad Gita 8:5 says, and whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. It's Krishna that's saying that. So how do we do that? How do we remember Krishna at the time of our death? Anybody know? Want to give it a shot? Huh? Yeah, practice. Exactly. Just like anything, we practice. Because at the time of death, it's a very intense and traumatic time. And so if we don't practice before we get there, it might be very difficult to think about Krishna. It'd be much easier to think like about, oh, my family, or, my job, or ow, this hurts, or, whatever it is. But if we practice, then we have a much better shot of being able to do that. So the Srimad Bhagavatam says, although Kali Yuga is an ocean of faults, there is still one good quality about this age. Simply by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, one can become free from material bondage and be promoted to the transcendental kingdom. So in each yuga, that we were talking about the different yugas, there's a different prescribed way of how to get out of this material entanglement and how to be spiritually realized. So in Satya Yuga, the way that you were able to do that was through meditation. Now, if you remember, everybody in Satya Yuga on average lived to be about 100,000 years old. So that meditation, you would be sitting for thousands of years meditating quietly in a forest with sitting on a specific kind of mat. And we don't have the ability to do that now. We just can't. One, we don't live long enough. And two, everything is so disturbing about Kali Yuga, right? Even if we manage to go to the forest and sit there and meditate, some hikers would pass by, or planes would go overhead, or, you know, any number of things, right? And if none of that happened, our own minds are just really hard to get under control in this age. And plus, like I said, we only live to be about 100 if we're lucky. So in Treta Yuga, the way that people attained enlightenment in that yuga was through rituals, doing rituals and austerities. And these are very elaborate rituals that you have to do just perfectly right, or they're not going to work. And we don't have the ability to do that either. Our ability to remember things is degraded, and we just don't know. We just don't know the specifics of those rituals and how to do them. And also, people lived a lot longer, so they had a lot more time to do more rituals. They lived for about 10,000 years. So in Dwarpa Yuga, the yuga previous to this one, the way to attain enlightenment then was through deity worship. And we do deity worship here, but it's like a small shadow of the deity worship in Dwarpa Yuga. That kind of deity worship was extremely elaborate. There would be pounds and like thousands and thousands of pounds of ghee being used in one session of worshiping your deities. There'd be great jewels and things like that. We don't have the money or the resources to get those things. So what do we do in Kali Yuga? Kali Yuga is the one bright spot in Kali Yuga is that, the ability to shed the material world, it's on sale, right? We don't have to sit and meditate for thousands of years. We don't have to gather all kinds of gems and ghee and gold and things like that. What we have to do is sit and chant the holy name. So Lord Chaitanya says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, in this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is the chanting of the holy names of the Lord. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. So although we're so distracted by so many things, this is something that we can do, is we can sit and we can chant. We can do it anywhere. It doesn't cost anything. And it's something you can do all day long. You can do it when you're walking. You can do it when you're driving. It's best to try to focus your mind on it and hear it, because it's a transcendental sound vibration that actually purifies us and allows us to become closer to Krishna. So I wanted to tell a few stories about the power of hearing. And one is the story of Ajamil. So how many of you know this story? Okay, a few of you know this story. So Ajamil, he was when he was a young boy, he was a Brahmin. He was a young Brahmin boy, and he was a pretty, he did some devotional service, and followed properly the regulations of being a Brahmin. But then one day, and he had a nice chaste wife, and one day he went out and he happened to see this prostitute embracing her client, and he just became kind of fixated on this, and he ended up bringing her into his house as a maidservant. And this didn't end well for him. He ended up running off with the prostitute and leaving behind his chaste wife. And then he ended up living with the prostitute for so many years. they had like 10 children together. His youngest he had when he was like 88 years old. So he was just, completely uncontrolled lust. And he's getting towards the end of his life, and he's sick. His son, his youngest son, who he loved very much, his youngest son was named Narayan, which is a name of Krishna, a name of God. And he was getting, he was very ill, and he was about to die, and the Yamadutas came. So the Yamadutas are basically like the messengers of death, the ones you don't want to see. Okay, they're going to take you for trial, and then possible punishment, depending on how your trial goes. And they're not pleasant to look at all. They're pretty hideous and scary. I think in one of these books I brought, there's some pictures of them, but maybe after I'm done I can find it. Anyway, so they're gonna come and get him and take him for trial because he's lived a sinful life. In order to support his 10 children and his wife, he was stealing, and he was plundering. He was just doing all sorts of things that were not appropriate to do in order to maintain his wife and children. They were getting drunk all the time. I mean, they were just living a sinful life where they're just indulging all their whims. We see some of our businessmen, kind of doing the same thing. They're just trying to support their families, but they're stealing from the citizens. They're cheating the people they're doing business with. I've heard someone say one time, no one becomes a billionaire by accident, right? You have to work at that. You have to take advantage of other people. You need to cut the wages of your employees. You need to do these kinds of things, and that's immoral. So anyway, so Ajamil, he's freaking out. He's seeing these scary Yamadutas coming for him, and he starts freaking out, and he starts calling out for his son, Narayan, Narayan, Narayan. He wants to see his son. But Narayan's also a name of Krishna. It's a name of God. And so all of a sudden, the messengers of God come, the Vishnu Dutas, which they're very glorious looking, very beautiful. And so they come and they tell the Yamadutas, hey, wait a minute. This man, he called out the name of the Lord. He's ours. Like, you can't take him. And the Yamadutas are saying, well, wait a minute. He did all these immoral, sinful things. And the Vishnu Guru said, it doesn't matter. He's ours. Like, he called out the name of the Lord. And so they kind of went back and forth a little bit. And the Yamadutas actually had a little bit of a crisis because they didn't really know what to do with this information. But ultimately, the Vishnu Dutas took hold of him, and they didn't take him back to the spiritual world right away. What they did do is send the Yamadutas away so that he could live a little bit longer and live out the rest of his life. So he had another chance to rectify his ways. And so he lived. It was like your classic near-death experience, right? So he survives, and he ends up dedicating his life to Krishna again, like he had when he was a young boy. And so ultimately, when he died, then the Vishnu Dutas came and took him away to the good place. So that's one story about the power of the holy name. It's so powerful. So just chanting these holy names, chanting the Maha Mantra is so incredibly powerful. And that is our prescribed duty for this age. So the other story I wanted to tell was the story of Parikshit. So if anybody reads the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is all these books, it's like 12 cantos. And the set I have, it's like 18 volumes. Each canto is several volumes. So Parikshit he's a king. He's actually the grandson of Arjuna from the Bhagavad Gita. And he ends up becoming king of the whole earth. And he's a really, really good king. And so then one day he was out in the forest and he was hunting. He was doing some hunting, and he got really thirsty. And he saw this sage. He had a little hut, and the sage was sitting in there meditating. And he went in the hut and he said, hey, can I please have something to drink? And the sage was in samadhi. He was in trance. And so the sage didn't respond to him. And this kind of made King Parikshit upset. And I think he might have asked him again, and he was ignored again. And so Parikshit's kind of ticked off, and he's going to walk out of the hut, and he sees this dead snake laying on the ground, and he picks it up, and he just kind of puts it around the neck of the sage like a garland. And he goes about his business. So the sage, he was kind of indifferent to it. He didn't really mind so much. But the sage had a son, and his son was really offended by this. And he just couldn't believe that someone had disrespected his father, who was a Brahmin, like that. So the son actually cursed Parikshit to die in 7 days by being bitten by a snake bird. And we like to joke, it's not a dragon, okay? It's a snake bird. So there's actually a picture, this second volume in there. You can see a picture of the snake bird in Parikshit. So he cursed him to die in 7 days by being bitten by this snake bird. And so what would you do if someone told you you're going to die in 7 days? Does anybody want to say what they would do?
Like if someone was super serious and like,
Yeah, and you knew they were telling the truth.
I knew they were like, I believed them.
Yeah.
I have to think about it.
Okay.
You're saying if I was dying in 7 days?
Yeah, what would you
What would
do?
I do if
Yep.
I was gonna die?
Yeah.
I'd follow my senses.
I was. I would.
Very little bit of each thing, if possible.
Deep samadhi.
you would meditate and go to deep samadhi? Okay, that's good. That's better than Ethan's answer.
Because I
Just
would-
a little bit.
Because that eliminates fear and pain.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to die. I just don't want to have too much pain. I hope I can mentally manage.
Yeah. Okay. Omar.
I'd probably like repent and like ask for forgiveness for stuff that I've done, maybe like sand.
Yeah. Okay, that's good.
Try to maximize like the good that I can do before I die.
Yeah, these are both good answers. I mean, I think when I was younger, if somebody asked me that, I would say, well, I think I would, go get all my favorite foods and eat them, and like maybe go hang out with my friends, or go out to the club and go dancing, or but yeah, King Parikshit, he knew that the purpose of life was to get to know Krishna, and so he actually called one of the great sages, Sukadeva Goswami, to come and explain to him everything he should know before he dies, and everything he should know. And so Sukadeva Goswami then spoke what is now the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so that is, for 7 days, King Parikshit listened to Sukadeva Goswami tell him the entirety of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And then, having attained enlightenment at the end of that, the snake bird came at the end of 7 days, and they had people protecting him, but the snake bird took on the form of a Brahmana and was able to get close to the king and bite him. And then the king immediately just immolated, started on fire, and then became just a pile of ashes. And so, and then he went back to Godhead. And so that's the power of hearing. And that's also where we got the Srimad Bhagavatam.
I'd like to say something.
Sure.
It's something that I meditated on before and many times. Is that I would imagine myself with some sort of death scare, like maybe a coma or cancer or something. And I thought about, well, what would I do if I had, let's say, like a week to live or whatever? And I told myself, oh, I would tell all these people I love them.
Thank you.
I would reconcile. I would, example, like repent. I would like start painting or finally pick up guitar. And what I said was, we don't need to have a death scare to push us to do the things that we're afraid to do.
Yeah.
Just go get that canvas and paint that.
Yeah.
Do it. Call your mom
Mhm.
and say, I love you. Even though maybe they weren't always there. Or maybe vice versa. I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
Mom. You know? Or maybe you finally booked that ticket to, for example, India.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
something I just wanted to say.
Yeah, they're very good. Yeah, Mary.
Comment on this.
Uh-huh.
Is, we don't have to wait until we're in pain to practice that deep meditation,
Mhm.
that trance kind of, meditation that can, if we learn it properly, put pain away.
Mhm.
You know, it's a real mental practice. I think a spiritual mental practice to be able to have a pain and not really feel it anymore. I mean, to be able to, and I think it's possible.
Yeah.
I think that is something I sort of practice even now, is to try to be strong in the face of something that isn't comfortable.
Yeah.
And I practice that. And I'm aware of when I'm not comfortable. I have a friend who's tried to teach me how to use a Rubik's Cube, and I'm so tired, I don't want to focus on that Rubik's Cube. But life doesn't always give us what we want. Sometimes we're tired, and we have to learn how to do something even if we're tired. So it's just a slight mental practice to learn how to do a Rubik's Cube when I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
It's almost a meditation to try to find that part of my mind that can power through. And I'm not really very good at it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm really a child when it comes to not wanting to do something. If I'm tired, I'll do that later.
Yeah.
Let's try to warm it up, put my big girl pants on, let's do this, you know?
Yeah.
So you're much wiser and have more life experience.
Oh, I'm old, that's why.
So
I'm getting close to death.
after all these decades, how do you get over it? How do you get over yourself?
How do you get over yourself?
Yeah.
I think it's just practice. I think it's a desire to want to get over yourself. And then every time you notice something, oh, I'm tired, I don't want to do it. And then consider that maybe I should push myself through this. But there's sometimes too, when I listen to my body, and if I feel I need to sleep,
Mhm.
I will do that too. Because sometimes we live in this meat bag here, and we have to, I mean, it's my opinion. I mean, I'm spouting out here. I'm not but it's my opinion. We live in a meat bag. The meat bag has to go to the bathroom, it has to eat, it has to sleep, it has to do these things. And sometimes the meat bag that we live in is like the child. And we still have to nurture that because we have to live here, you know? So we're living in it. We have to sometimes not abuse the little meat bag we live in. And if it says sleep, it's time to sleep. If it says eat, maybe it's time to eat. And sometimes we can mentally fast or go days without sleeping, but I think we don't want to kill our physical body. So we have to be careful. I mean, I have to be careful. I can't program.
Yeah.
I have to watch myself that I push my body to its limits sometimes, but then I give into it because it's a child and you don't want to force a child to go beyond their capability. So I try to find that balance. It's just a constant desire of mine to do that.
So those of us that have actually been chanting and gone out on Harinam, which is where we go out and chant the holy names in the street, and we sing and we dance and we chant, we'll notice that, sometimes it's really cold and we don't want to go out and do it, right? It's really cold, it's uncomfortable, but we do it anyway because that's our duty. That's what our duty is in this age of Kali. And we'll notice that when we're chanting and we're out there, we're not feeling cold, we're not feeling tired or anything like that. But as soon as we stop, then we're like, oh my God, it's really cold, I'm tired, But if we keep doing it, and that's the power of the holy name. And sometimes it is very important for us to take care of our bodies. You're right, Mary, because we need to be fit to do service. We need to be fit. We need to, if we're not feeling well and our bodies are run down, we're not able to do these things. Yeah. But at the same time, we also need to do our duty too, so.
Because there are times like, I know I'm not really exactly, but I'm close. But I do Tai Chi sometimes. I don't know if that's anything to do with, but I have noticed that if I'm doing Tai Chi or yoga or something, that I can start sweating even if it's below 0. In Alaska, I would do Tai Chi outside at 20 below and begin sweating.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how, I don't know what it is exactly. I don't know what I'm doing, but I know sometimes you can actually feel hot when it's very cold, or you can make your body feel very cold when it's hot.
Yeah.
I don't know how it works. I don't know what's going on. I just know that it's possible.
Okay, let's see if anybody else wants to contribute to the conversation, or has any questions or comments. Yes.
So each yuga, there's a different prescribed method to achieve enlightenment. And does that mean, so like in the Patra Yuga, the first Yuga, if someone attains enlightenment, do they not reincarnate in the following Yuga?
It depends, because sometimes you can go right back to Godhead and stay there eternally, but sometimes there might be a reason that you want to come back. Sometimes Krishna will want you to come back, and like an example would be a spiritual master, right? So a spiritual master has made a contract with their disciples that they're going to come back for them if they don't make it, right? So they're going to have to reincarnate to come back and get their disciples and help them get through. But in that process, they usually end up making more disciples, right? And so I've thought about this a lot. So then that just means that they're just going to keep coming back, and, so it really just depends. It's hard to say specifically on an individual basis what the answer to that would be. So any other comments, questions, Mary?
There's a woman on YouTube that I saw that she talked about our language and how there's words that we say that if you really break them down, they have a whole other meaning. And how we need to kind of change how we talk. So if you take that word apocalypse, if you break it down to a possible collapse, which
Yeah, well, that fits. Very good. Yeah, etymology of words is very interesting.
So
Lalita is still suffering. I mean, it's like an age of suffering, right?
Yeah, it's
the suffering of the mind, the body, the
yeah,
the emotions, like lots of like distress. This constant distress of something, and when there's no end, when you know there's no end, that just increases the suffering.
right.
So to think that there's going to be an apocalypse or end of days, great, no more suffering.
Exactly. That's why I was disappointed. And the morning after the Y2K thing happened, I was like, oh, darn it. I thought it was my big chance. But no such luck. So, yeah, Omar.
Might be kind of a ridiculous question, but if it's the case that if you think about God, or like chance when you die and you go back to Godhead, wouldn't it be moral to like hold like a whole room full of people hostage and play like Hare Krishna chants and then just slow it down and send them all back to Godhead, and then you'd be doing a good thing by doing that. So
Right.
You're then like, you know.
Wow.
No,
I'm not sure how that, I mean, like, I know so many people that you know, their parents maybe aren't favorable to Christian consciousness, but then when they pass, they would go and they would put tilak on them and put tulsi beads on them and put tulsi in their mouth and stuff like that, and play the Maha Mantra for them. So I don't think that's really any different, except for you're thinking of streamlining this, doing this on a mass scale.
Because you never know when you're gonna die, so maybe it'd be more wise to have a controlled setting where you know for sure you go, and then
Yeah.
you'll for sure go to Godhead. You don't know what's gonna happen in the future. You get
Right.
hit by a car, the Maha Mantra's not playing, you know?
Right.
So why not just take everybody, swallow a pill, and I'll just chant die?
Yeah. Well, and also, Srila Prabhupada has said, like, because some of his disciples have asked him that, like, you know, well, what if I forget Krishna, you know? And Srila Prabhupada said that, you know, well, then I will personally come back and get you, you know? And so this is part of the agreement that happens between a spiritual master and a disciple, you know? Yeah. It's really, really heavy, but that spiritual master is going to keep coming back to get you. It might take a few lifetimes, or they might be able to come back. You know, there's some really far out stories. I don't know any of them well enough to tell them right now. But there's some really far out stories about some of Srila Prabhupada's disciples that have left their bodies after, you know, he already left his body. And where it seemed like Prabhupada did come back for them. So I'll try to find some of those and send them to you. I need to get your number or something so I can do that. But all right. Is there any more questions or comments? Or we'll just end here. All right. Jai Hare Krishna, Hare Bol.
Thank you.